Most real estate investors think that they're making money, but the truth is, most aren't profitable at all.
In my first few years flipping houses for rent or for sale, I was crushing it. I thought I had it all figured out. Had built my team, built my bank accounts. I was able to leave my job and do this thing full time.
But then because of this special tax, I watched all my profits go boop.
But investors who understand these concepts that I'm about to share with you, well, they don't get as impacted by a market crash. And so let's start with the most obvious one. In my first few years as a house flipper, what I would do when I would assess a deal is I would think about the acquisition price, the rehab, and then what I would pay for a hard money loan. And then I'd subtract out from what I think I could sell it for, and that's where I would figure my profit. The truth is, there are so many other costs that I wasn't accounting for, like the closing costs on the front end, the points on the loan, the insurance, the taxes. And then once you've accounted for those, then you have to think about the changes in your plan. That's just how it works out on a spreadsheet. What about when your budget runs over and you don't have a financial contingency set up? You know, an extra 10 or 20% on top of what you thought the rehab was going to cost. And then what about when you thought it was going to be 4 to 6 months, but it ends up taking 8 to 12 months? And then you have to pay all those extra months of taxes, insurance, interest on your loan. What happens to a lot of investors is they don't account for this or don't account for it enough. And then what they have to do is figure out a way to make the ends meet on the project. Because the one thing you can't do is sell the project early. You have to get it to the finish line. So for me, what I had to do was I had to go start all kinds of side hustles to pay for all these things that I didn't expect to pay for. One of those side hustles was starting a construction company. And what would happen at the end of the project is I would sell it, and at the closing table, I would actually get money to put in my pocket. But if I really broke down what happened, the amount of money that I would put in my pocket at the end of that project was not the money that I made from the flip. It was the money that I made from all the side hustles that I had to have going to make the ends meet. So basically, I had created what I call a forced savings account for me. If I wiped the flip away completely and just did these side hustles, I would have made the same amount of money. Now, without that experience and the scars I have from my early flipping days, I would have never gotten to where I am today, so I can't complain too much. But the point is that a lot of times, the money isn't coming from where you think it's coming from. Now, fortunately, those costs can be found and tracked on a spreadsheet. However, there are some costs that are a little bit more hidden. There are 3 main hidden costs. I'm going to start with what I see as the biggest one, which is your opportunity cost. The time that you spent on the aforementioned flip, it could have been spent doing all these side hustles. But since you had the flip going, you couldn't use your time on these side hustles. Therefore, you lost the opportunity cost to do these side hustles. Now that you understand that, you can probably better understand the opportunity cost to your assets. An asset may be a great contractor that you're using. This example hits close to home for me because I also have a construction company. You might consider that my side hustle. So if I had this great contractor, I could use him in the construction company, making money from other customers, or I could use him in this flip. If I use him in this flip, I lose the opportunity to use him over here in the side hustle. Next hidden cost is inspection resolutions. So yeah, we touched on overrunning your budget in both time and money, but now when you finally get that project to the finish line, and then you get a call from your real estate agent, and they say that, hey, they're not gonna buy this house until you do these 5 to 10 different items. That's known as your inspection resolution. And this one always costs you. And I hear a lot of people out there saying, well, I'll have my guys do the renovation so well that there won't be an inspection resolution. Even on the highest class new builds, there's gonna be an inspection resolution. These guys have a company to go in and inspect a house and come back with a list. They're coming back with a list. I believe that this cost is on top of the financial contingency that you've set aside for your rehab budget. The final hidden cost is overhead that would not otherwise exist. When you start your real estate organization, you're going to be tempted to have an office, maybe have some administrative employees, your electricity bill, your sewer bill, your tech fees, the different software that you have to hold, your telephone bill, your bookkeeper, your attorney, your CPA. All of these things, including other costs that I didn't mention, are considered the overhead for your company. If a company didn't exist, either would your overhead cost. But the thing is, when your bookkeeper goes to do the books for the project, the flip that you just completed, they're not including your overhead costs. That comes in your profit and loss statement. So a lot of people overlook the fact that that overhead only exists because you're doing the flip. And then there's the biggest cost of them all, the ultimate vampire. You've heard it said, the only two things you can count on are death and taxes. And that's what we're talking about today. The taxes, not the death. Well, let's go back to my dumber former self. I finished my first flip and I actually put some money in my pocket, a couple $100,000. And I was pumped, went on vacation after my 550 days straight. Then a few months later, I saw my tax bill and it was about half of that money.
What? Really?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the thing. When you're flipping houses, you've started a business. And when you start a business, there's extra taxes that you have to pay, namely your self-employment tax. And you still have your ordinary income tax, which it just so happens that if you're a good flipper, your income goes up quite a bit. Therefore, you have to pay even more taxes. Now, that is why ultimately we want to get to holding real estate, because there's a different set of tax codes that really work in your benefit. But that's for a different day. Now, all you need to know is you're going to have to pay some taxes, and you need to prepare for it. Now, those are the taxes that you're going to owe to your local, state, and federal government. But now let's talk about this special tax, what I call the bubble tax. Now, when we talk about taxes, like the federal taxes, for instance, the best strategy that you can have is to save a percentage of all of your earnings. And that's exactly how I think it works for this bubble tax. Here's what the bubble tax is. Right now, we're in good times, so the market is continuing to appreciate. The house that you own is becoming worth more money every day. But at some point, the bubble pops and the value goes down. That's what happened in 2008. That was the financial crisis. Housing prices went from up here to down here overnight. So what I believe is that during these good times, when the value is appreciating, you need to put aside some money, because eventually you're going to get caught in the middle of a project where that bubble pops. Now, the bubble tax is not something that you're gonna go search for and find online. It's something that I refer to as a way to remind myself to not get too far out over my skis. Because right now, we're in a great time. We've been in a great time for really the last decade plus, because the market has been going up. It's been appreciating. That means the house that you own has become worth more money every day. So you bought it here, and now it's here in value. And that's exactly what was happening leading up to 2008, the financial crisis. The prices kept going up and up and up until they didn't. That bubble popped and the market corrected itself. That means that that house that we were talking about that was valued up here was all of a sudden valued all the way down here, just like all of the other houses. Now, I'm not saying that we're living in a bubble right now, and I'm not saying I know when it's gonna pop. And one thing that you need to know about economics is history always repeats itself.
There will be other crises. There's no way of knowing when you're in a situation like we were in.
That means that eventually the market is gonna correct. You don't know when, nobody knows when. So what you need to know is, just like taxes to the federal government, this tax exists and ultimately you're gonna have to pay it. So you need to set yourself up for success and have a plan to be able to pay that bubble tax, as we call it. So let's talk about that plan. There are really two ways that I go about combating this bubble tax. The first one is pretty simple. It's just like the taxes that I have to pay to the federal, local, and state government. When I make $1, I make sure to put a certain percentage of that aside, knowing that at the end of the year, I'm gonna have to pay these taxes. Therefore, as you're flipping these houses, you have to understand that some of this money that you've made during the good times is gonna go towards this day that the market corrects and the value of your assets are gonna go down. And now for the more offensive strategy, which is really a two-pronged approach. One is getting the right deal on the front end, and two is having the right mix of active projects. First, let's talk about getting the right deal. When I say getting a good deal, what I really mean is finding the true market value of the home and buying it there. But what people end up doing in inflationary times is they actually buy above what the true market value is, and they speculate that the market will continue to rise and they'll be okay. But you can see what a problem that might be if the market does correct itself. Because not only are you paying for the market correction on the true market value, but you're also paying for the difference between the true market value and this inflationary price that you paid. And that's why it's so important that even when the times are good, you stay disciplined and underwrite your deals to find the right deal and not overpay. And now the second prong, which is the right mix of active projects. So an active project means one that you're actually working on. Non-active means that the house has actually been sold or it's already been refinanced. Because that means you've actually collected the money for your work. And so if the market does correct itself, it's not going to affect the amount of money you put in your pocket. The goal here is to take all of the active projects that you have going on, and on average, how far away from pushing them over the line of a finished project are they? This line of taking a project from active to not active is what I call the line of livable. On average, what I want to do is take the active projects that I have and make sure that I'm not too far away from this line. Because to me, the distance from this line on average that I am is equivalent to the amount of risk that I'm taking on. And when the market corrects itself, it'll be really easy to find the ones that took on too much risk. It'll be all the neighborhoods with the unfinished houses. The bottom line in combating this bubble tax that we're talking about is that even when the times are good, you need to keep yourself grounded because it won't always be that way. History repeats itself. So make sure that you're diversifying your active projects, maniacally underwriting deals, and putting some money aside so you don't get caught when the market corrects itself. The good thing is you can avoid all of this. Just stay in your job. Don't try to get ahead in life. Why not? Yeah, I didn't think so either. That's why I thought a lot about what I would do if I started all over from scratch, and I made a whole video about it.